What is the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, and have you done it? In Matthew 12, verses 22 to 32, Jesus actually introduces himself by alluding to an illustration from the book of Isaiah. In verse 29, he identifies himself as someone entering the strong man's house to plunder him and to take his goods. This is an allusion to Isaiah 49, verse 25, where God says, "Even the captives of the mighty shall be taken, and the prey of the tyrant be rescued. For I will contend with those who contend with you, and I will save your children." What Jesus is doing in answering the accusations of the religious leaders is he is saying that he is the divine warrior promised from Isaiah. He has come to take the captives from Israel's strong captors. It's with this context of Isaiah in mind that Jesus sees himself casting out demons. It's this very conflict that causes the religious leaders to say that power comes from Satan himself. In response to that accusation, that's when Jesus then says, "Whoever blasphemies against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven." Where does this idea of the Holy Spirit in the context of deliverance from strong captors come from? For this, we need to go back to Isaiah, specifically chapter 63. Isaiah 63 is looking back at Israel's response to the first Exodus. After Israel was delivered from Egypt, led through the promised land, giving all of these blessings in the land, strength to conquer their enemies, Israel continued to rebel. They worshipped idols. They denied God's law. They didn't take care of the widow or the orphan. They were corrupt. Now look at how Isaiah 63 describes it. "They rebelled and grieved his Holy Spirit. Therefore he, God, turned to be their enemy and himself fought against them. Then he remembered the days of old, of Moses and his people. Where is he who brought them up out of the sea with the shepherds of his flock? Where is he who put in the midst of them his Holy Spirit?" Isaiah is looking back at the first Exodus and describing that Exodus as a time where God's Holy Spirit was active among Israel as he was providing salvation for them, such that to reject God's initial salvation in the first Exodus could be described as one grieving or rebelling against the Holy Spirit. Now, in light of that understanding of the first Exodus, Jesus is calling to mind what's now happening in his life and ministry. He is leading the second Exodus, and therefore to reject the work that he is doing, to attribute the miracles of his life to Satan rather than to God, is to do what's called the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. It is to slander God himself, to look upon his salvation, to look upon the life of Christ, the miracles, the healings, the resurrection itself, to deny what God is doing for you in Jesus Christ is like the first Exodus, to deny or grieve the Holy Spirit. And Jesus says, if you continue to refuse him, to give Satan credit for what only God can be doing in Jesus Christ, then you yourself are blaspheming the Holy Spirit. You are slandering God. And apart from that salvation that Christ is providing, there is no forgiveness. That is to say, the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit isn't any one specific word that you can say or set of words. It is a refusal to recognize what God is doing for you in Jesus Christ. And just like the first Israel, it is to grieve or blaspheme the Holy Spirit, to reject God's salvation, to go into the grave without looking upon Jesus Christ and seeing what God has provided for you. Apart from Christ, there is no salvation, and therefore to reject him is to grieve or blaspheme the Holy Spirit.